You should have died instead of Dad. Those words came from my daughter's mouth, my only child. They didn't just hurt. They tore through me like poisoned knives, slicing through everything I thought we still had left. In that moment, it felt like the ground gave way beneath me, and I was falling into a darkness I couldn't escape. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even breathe. Claire looked me straight in the eyes when she said it, calm and cold, as if she had rehearsed it 1,000 times. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She just delivered the sentence, like a final verdict in a trial I didn't even know I was part of. I stood frozen in our dining room, the table still set with food she barely touched, the wine in her glass untouched. I had spent the entire day trying to make everything perfect, hoping that tonight would be different, that maybe, just maybe, she would let me in. But instead, she gave me that. She gave me death. Not his, mine. I watched her gather her coat, sling her purse over her shoulder, and walk toward the door like a stranger. And when it closed behind her, the silence that followed was worse than anything she had said. I stood there, alone, with my hands still shaking, and my heart breaking in a way I didn't know was possible. I had already lost my husband. Now, I had lost my daughter too. And somewhere, beneath the pain and shock, one question echoed over and over again in my mind. How did we get here? I didn't move for a long time after Claire left. The house was still, quiet in a way that felt cruel. The roast had gone cold. The candles flickered until they burned themselves out. I remained at the table, surrounded by untouched food and unanswered questions. My daughter had just wished me dead, and all I could do was stare at the place where she had been sitting moments earlier, as if, by sheer force of will, I could make her walk back in and say it was all a mistake. But she wouldn't. She had meant it, every word. My hands were trembling as I reached for her wine glass, still half full. I brought it to my lips and drank the bitter liquid in one long swallow. I didn't taste it. I didn't care. I just needed something, anything, to anchor me. The last time Claire and I had shared a real moment, one not filled with tension or distance, was months ago, at the hospital, standing beside Richard's bed. He had been unconscious for days, his body shrinking, his spirit already somewhere else. Claire had held my hand tightly then. We had cried together. We had mourned the man who held us both together. I thought that grief would bring us closer. Instead, it carved a chasm between us. Tonight proved that, and there was no pretending anymore. I stood up, slowly, my joints stiff from sitting too long in the same position. The dishes on the table clinked lightly as I brushed past them, walking into the kitchen like a ghost in my own home. I scraped the food into the trash, barely noticing what I was doing. My body was moving, but my mind was still sitting at that table. Frozen in the moment, my daughter's words tore my heart in two. You should have died instead of Dad. I wanted to scream. I wanted to collapse on the floor and sob until my body gave out. But instead, I opened the dishwasher and began loading the plates, one by one, as if I could wash the evening away. I had tried so hard these past months. I had done everything to make her feel safe, to show her that we still had each other. I never pushed. I never questioned the distance. I just waited. I waited and hoped she'd come back to me on her own. But now it was clear. She didn't want me. She blamed me. And maybe part of her had always blamed me for something I couldn't name. After the kitchen was clean, I walked through the house in silence. Every room held pieces of Richard, his books, his cologne still faint in the air upstairs, his jacket still hanging by the door. I hadn't had the heart to pack any of it away. I told myself it was for Claire, that maybe seeing him in these rooms would make her feel close to him again. But the truth is, I needed him. I needed reminders that he had been real, that I hadn't imagined a life where I was loved, deeply, unconditionally. I stopped at the hallway mirror. My reflection startled me. Tired eyes, hollow cheeks. gray streaks at my temples that hadn't been there a year ago. This is what grief does, I thought. It ages you in ways no one sees until it's too late. And that's when the question finally escaped my lips, barely a whisper but loud enough to fill the whole house. Where did I lose my daughter? I didn't sleep. I lay in bed with the light off, the ceiling above me dark and unmoving, like the surface of a frozen lake. Time crawled. Every few minutes, I would glance at the clock on my nightstand, hoping more hours had passed than actually had. They hadn't. My mind kept replaying the dinner, her voice, her eyes, that sentence. It echoed louder in the silence. By 3 in the morning, I gave up trying. I pulled the blanket aside and sat on the edge of the bed, my feet flat on the cold floor. The house creaked with age, or maybe with grief. It was hard to tell the difference anymore. I wrapped my robe around me and stepped into the hallway. The door to Richard's study was closed. I hadn't gone inside in weeks. I kept telling myself I needed time, that when I was ready, I'd sort through his things, pack away what needed to be packed, donate what didn't. But part of me wasn't sure I'd ever be ready. Tonight, though, something pulled me there. I opened the door gently and stepped inside. The scent hit me instantly. Leather, ink, and something soft I could never quite name but always associated with him. The desk was still neat, just as he had left it. Papers stacked, pens lined up, his glasses folded beside a closed book. Everything untouched. I ran my fingers along the edge of the desk and then opened the drawer. Receipts. Old photos. Notes written in his small, careful handwriting. I picked one up, just a grocery list, but I held it like it was something sacred. Proof that he had been here, that he had lived a life filled with little things. At the very back of the drawer, under a bundle of documents, I found something I hadn't seen before. A small wooden box, darker than the rest of the desk. It had no lock, just a simple brass latch, polished from years of use. I hesitated. Something about it felt deliberate, hidden but not unreachable, like he had wanted it to be found, just not too soon. I unlatched it carefully and opened the lid. Inside was a single envelope, cream-colored, heavy. My name was written on the front in his handwriting, elegant, steady, unmistakably his. For Margaret, only if something happens to me. My breath caught. My hands trembled as I held it, staring at the words like they might disappear if I blinked. Part of me wanted to put it back, close the box, and pretend I had never seen it. Maybe I wasn't ready for whatever was inside. Maybe some truths were better left buried. But another part of me, a deeper part, the one that had broken open tonight, needed answers. Slowly I slid my finger under the flap and opened the envelope. The paper inside was thick, folded neatly into thirds. As I unfolded it and saw the first line, my heart began to pound. It wasn't a goodbye letter. It was a secret. And once I read it, nothing in my life, nothing in Claire's life, would ever be the same again. I carried the letter to the kitchen like it was a piece of glass. Fragile, dangerous, too important to hold for long. I didn't know why I went there. Maybe because it was the one room in the house that still felt alive. The soft hum of the refrigerator, the warmth of the floor beneath my feet, the half-burnt candle on the windowsill. It was the place I used to cook for Richard, laugh with Claire. A room that once held comfort. I sat at the table and unfolded the letter again, laying it flat before me like a confession I hadn't asked for. His handwriting filled the page, steady, thoughtful. He had written it carefully, as if each word cost him something. My dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And if I know you at all, you've been avoiding this box for as long as you could. I didn't want to leave this behind. I didn't want to burden you with more pain after I'm gone. But I also didn't want to leave this world without telling you the truth, because you deserve honesty, even if it's late. I've always known Claire wasn't mine. The words hit like a wave, cold, unstoppable. I had to read the sentence 3 times before I truly absorbed it. My breath caught in my throat. My hands went cold. You never told me, and I never asked. But I knew. From the beginning. The timing, the hesitation in your eyes when we first talked about starting a family. The way you flinched when I said her eyes looked like yours. It wasn't hard to piece together. But I loved her. I loved her the moment I held her, and I never once thought of her as anything but my daughter. I need you to know that. I don't blame you. I never did. Whatever happened between you and him, whoever he was, it didn't change how I saw you, or her. We were a family, and I chose to keep it that way. But Claire deserves to know, someday, not from me, not in anger, and not because of guilt. She deserves the truth because she'll need it to understand who she is. When you're ready, tell her. I trust you to know when that time comes. I read the letter again, slower this time. My vision blurred with tears I hadn't realized were falling. He had known all those years. He had known and said nothing. He had lived with it, carried it, protected me from it. Not out of weakness, but out of love. I clutched the page to my chest and sobbed. It wasn't just grief this time. It was shame, guilt, gratitude, all tangled together in a knot I didn't know how to untie. After a while, I stood up and walked to the drawer where I kept old photo albums. I pulled one out, the red leather one with Claire's baby pictures. I flipped through the pages slowly. Her first smile, her first birthday. Richard holding her at the beach, beaming. Then I found it. A picture I had tucked away years ago, almost forgotten. Jonathan Hayes. He stood beside me in a photograph taken at a summer fundraiser, one I had attended long before I met Richard. His hand rested lightly on my back. We weren't smiling. We were looking at each other. And I remember the feeling in that moment, complicated, dangerous, unforgettable. Claire's eyes. Her eyes had always been a mystery to me. Green like mine, yes, but something about them never quite fit with Richard's soft features. But now I knew. I held the photo up beside one of Claire as a teenager. The resemblance was unmistakable. Same sharp jawline, same posture, same fire in the eyes. It was him. Jonathan was her biological father, and I had spent 3 decades pretending it had never happened. I didn't call him right away. I told myself I needed time to think, to breathe, to process what I had read. But the truth was simpler than that. I was afraid. Afraid of what he might say, afraid of what I might feel, afraid of reopening a part of my life I had sealed shut so long ago, I had almost convinced myself it didn't matter anymore. But it did. Claire's face haunted me now, not just because of the words she had spoken, but because of what I had withheld from her. A truth she had every right to know. And if I was going to tell her, when I was ready, I would need answers, closure, something real to give her instead of more silence. So on a cold, bright morning, I found Jonathan Hayes again. It wasn't hard. He'd never disappeared like I had. His name was still on the board of a prominent investment firm in Boston. A quick search led me to a polished website, his bio carefully curated, a confident photo staring back at me. Silver hair, clean smile, same sharp eyes. There he was, older of course, but still unmistakably him. The same man I had loved briefly and left deliberately. I stared at his contact information for hours. I even wrote and deleted a dozen emails. What would I say? Hi, remember me? We might have a daughter together. Thought you should know. No, it wasn't something you put in writing. So I called. It rang 3 times before a calm, professional voice answered. Jonathan Hayes. I nearly hung up. My throat closed. My fingers shook around the phone. I almost pressed end, but something in me, the part still holding Richard's letter like a lifeline, spoke first. Jonathan, it's Margaret. Margaret Collins. A silence followed, a heavy one. Then finally his voice changed, softer, slower. Margaret, after all these years? I closed my eyes. His voice still had that deep steadiness I remembered, and something else, an undercurrent I couldn't name. Surprise, maybe, or something heavier. Yes, I said, barely above a whisper. I know it's unexpected. I wasn't sure I should call at all. I'm glad you did. His answer came too quickly. It caught me off guard. I had expected hesitation, confusion, suspicion. Instead, there was something almost relieved in his tone. Are you all right? He asked. It was such a simple question, but no one had asked me that in months, not like they meant it. No, I admitted. Not really, but I'm trying to be. Another silence, this one gentler. Do you want to meet? He asked. We could talk. I don't know if I'm ready to talk, I said. He didn't push. Then we'll sit. That's all. Just sit. I gave him the name of a cafe in downtown Boston. Quiet, discreet, a place where no one would recognize us or ask questions. A neutral ground for something that was anything but neutral. As I ended the call, my hands were still shaking. I had opened a door I'd kept locked for over 30 years, and behind it was a man who didn't know he had a daughter. The cafe was quiet, intentionally so. Tucked between two office buildings in Back Bay, it was the kind of place where conversations stayed private and the music stayed low. I chose a table in the corner far from the windows and arrived early so I could brace myself. I kept watching the door, telling myself I had made a mistake, that I should get up and leave, that some truths weren't meant to be revisited, but I stayed. Because I had read the letter, because I owed Claire more than silence, because I owed myself something too, though I didn't yet know what. And then I saw him. Jonathan stepped inside like he had always belonged, confident, composed, sharply dressed in a tailored charcoal coat. He scanned the room, and when his eyes landed on me, he stopped. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he walked over slowly, like he wasn't sure if I'd vanish if he got too close. Margaret, he said softly as he pulled out the chair across from me. You look exactly the same. I smiled, but only slightly. You've aged well. He chuckled, but I could see something else behind his eyes. Curiosity, maybe even worry. This wasn't a casual reunion, and we both knew it. We sat in silence for a few seconds. I traced the rim of my coffee cup with my fingertip. He waited patiently, like he always had. I wasn't sure you'd come, I said. I wasn't sure you'd ever call. His voice dropped just a little. But I'm glad you did. I nodded, then looked at him fully for the first time in decades. He hadn't changed in the ways that mattered. He still had that self-assured presence, the kind that filled a room without trying. But there was something softer about him now, less guarded, less polished, like time had stripped away a few layers of armor. I didn't call for me, I said. That made him pause. Then for who? I looked down, took a breath, and said it. For Claire. He blinked. Your daughter. Our daughter. Silence. The word hovered between us, heavy and electric. His face didn't change, not right away. But something behind his eyes shifted, a memory maybe, or a realization long buried that finally surfaced. I see, he said carefully. So it's true? I wasn't sure it was back then, I said. I didn't know until much later, and by the time I suspected, I was already married to Richard. He wanted a family. He loved her from the beginning, and I swallowed the guilt. I never told anyone, not even him, but he knew. He always knew. Jonathan leaned back, absorbing every word. He didn't interrupt, didn't accuse, just listened. "Why now?" he asked. "Because Richard is gone," I said. "And Claire? She's broken. She's angry. And I think part of her has always felt something was missing, even if she couldn't name it." His eyes grew distant, as if trying to reach across time. 32 years, he said softly, and I never knew. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to shatter the life I was building. I was afraid and selfish." He looked at me then. Really looked. "I don't hate you for it," he said. "I don't think I ever could." Something in me cracked at those words. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his wallet. From a hidden flap, he took a small, creased photo, one I hadn't seen in years. It was of the two of us at a fundraiser, the same summer Claire must have been conceived. "I kept this," he said. I don't know why, but I did. I reached out and touched the edge of the photo, my fingers brushing his. "She looks like you," I said, "more than I ever realized." Jonathan exhaled slowly. "I have a daughter," he said, not as a statement but like a prayer. "I've had a daughter all along." I didn't plan for Jonathan to reach her first. After our meeting, I asked him for time to prepare Claire, to find the right words, to somehow soften the blow of a truth that would change her life. He agreed, reluctantly, but I could see the desperation in his eyes. 32 years of silence had just collapsed in an hour, and now he wanted to fill in the gaps all at once. I should have known it wouldn't hold. It happened 2 days later. A call, late afternoon, Claire's name on my phone screen. I hesitated before answering. "Claire," I said. Her voice came through, raw and shaking. "You lied to me." The words struck like a slap. "Claire, please." "You lied to me my entire life." My heart pounded. "I was going to tell you. I was trying to find the right way." "I didn't hear it from you," she snapped. "I heard it from him. Some man shows up at my office, says he knows you, says he might be my father. You let me meet a stranger who thinks he has a right to that title." I closed my eyes. "I didn't send him. I swear to you. I asked him to wait." She laughed bitterly. "Well, he didn't?" There was silence. Then her voice broke, sharper, louder, more hurt than angry. "So my whole life was a lie?" "No," I said quickly. "No, Claire. You were loved. Richard was your father in every way that mattered. But he wasn't my real father." "Yes, he was," I said, my voice cracking. "He chose you. He loved you without question. He raised you, protected you. But you never told me," she shouted. "You let me grieve for him like he was everything. And now you expect me to just rewrite the last 30 years of my life because you kept secret." I could barely breathe. "I didn't tell you because I was afraid," I said. "Afraid I'd lose you. Afraid I'd break something that couldn't be repaired." "Well, congratulations," she said, her voice cold now. "You broke it anyway. Claire, please, don't call me. Don't try to explain. I can't look at you right now. I don't even know who you are." "Claire." The line went dead. I stood in the hallway, the phone still pressed to my ear, the silence echoing louder than the dial tone. My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor. She knew. She finally knew. And I had lost her all over again. I told myself not to go. I told myself to give her space, to wait, to let the rage settle. But silence had already stolen so much between us. I couldn't bear to lose her completely. So I got on the train to Manhattan the next morning. I didn't call. I didn't warn her. I just showed up at her apartment door, rehearsing 1,000 different ways to say I'm sorry, all of which felt too small. My hands trembled as I knocked. I half hoped she wouldn't answer. But she did. She opened the door in her robe, hair pulled back, no makeup, raw, tired, still beautiful in that fierce way of hers. She looked at me like I was a ghost. "What are you doing here?" she asked flatly. "Claire," I began, my voice barely steady. "Please, I just need to talk to you." She didn't move, didn't invite me in. "You should have thought about that 30 years ago." "I know," I said quickly. "I know I failed you, but please, let me explain." She stepped aside, just enough to let me in, then closed the door with more force than necessary. The apartment was spotless, cold, modern. Nothing like the home I raised her in. I sat on the edge of the sofa. She didn't. "I didn't want to hurt you," I said. Claire folded her arms. "But you did." I was young. I was scared. When I found out I was pregnant, Richard and I had just gotten serious. I wasn't even sure who the father was until months later. And by then, he loved you. He loved us. I thought the truth would ruin everything. "So you lied to everyone, including him?" I hesitated. "He knew. He never said it, but he knew. He chose not to ask." Claire let out a sharp, disbelieving breath. "How convenient." "It wasn't like that." "Don't," she said, cutting me off. "Don't paint this as some noble sacrifice. You didn't lie to protect anyone. You lied because it was easier." I felt the heat rise in my throat, shame burning behind my ribs. Maybe I did. Maybe I made the wrong choice. But I loved you, every single day of your life. She turned away, pacing to the window. "You let me build my entire identity around a man who wasn't even my biological father. I grieved him. I broke for him. I hated you for surviving instead of him." "I know," I whispered. She spun around. "Do you?" I looked at her, really looked at her. Her anger, her pain, the fracture between us that had widened into a canyon. "I lost him too," I said. "And now I've lost you." For the first time, something flickered in her expression. Grief, not rage. "You've destroyed everything I had left of Dad," she said softly. "Do you get that? There's nothing pure anymore. No memory I can trust." Tears slipped down my cheeks before I could stop them. "He loved you. That's what was real. Everything else, mistakes, lies, they never touched that." Claire stood still, her voice breaking. "You should have told me the truth. You should have trusted me to love him anyway." I nodded because she was right. I hadn't trusted her, and now she didn't trust me. She walked to the door and opened it again, wordlessly. I stood, unsure if I should beg or stay or fall to my knees, but I didn't. I just looked at her one last time. "I'm so sorry." She didn't answer. I walked out. The door closed behind me with the finality of a verdict. Jonathan didn't listen when I told him to wait. I don't blame him. After learning he had a daughter, how could he sit still? But when I stepped off the elevator and saw him standing outside Claire's apartment, nervous, too well-dressed, holding a small gift bag like this was some kind of birthday party, I knew it was a mistake. "She's not ready," I told him. He turned to me, startled. I thought, maybe if she saw me again, if I just introduced myself properly. "You don't get to introduce yourself," I said gently. "Not yet." But he wouldn't leave, and when Claire opened the door, already angry, already raw from our last fight, and saw us both standing there, something inside her snapped. "Unbelievable," she said, her voice low and shaking. "You brought him now." "No," I said quickly. "He came on his own. I told him not to." "You don't get to make decisions for me anymore. Either of you." Jonathan stepped forward, slow and cautious. "Claire, I know this is overwhelming. I can't imagine what you're feeling, but I needed to come. To see you." Claire stared at him like he was something foreign, some misplaced figure from another life. "You don't even know me," she said, "and yet you think you have the right to show up at my home and act like this is some overdue reunion? I'm not asking for anything, he said softly. I just wanted you to see me, to know I'm not a rumor or a name in a letter. I'm real, and I care. She laughed, sharp and humorless. You care? You cared so much you disappeared for 3 decades? That's rich. I didn't know, he said, his voice rising for the first time. I would have been there if I had, but you weren't, she shouted. And now you think I need another man trying to step in and fill the void Dad left? You think that's what this is? No, Jonathan said, taking a breath. I just think you deserve the truth. Claire's voice dropped to a whisper, one laced with venom. What I deserve is peace, and you're not part of it. She turned to me, eyes full of betrayal. And you? You keep showing up, like presence is enough to fix the damage. You think just being here makes up for everything you kept from me? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Claire looked between us, then pointed to the hallway. Both of you, leave. Jonathan hesitated. His hand opened slightly as if he might reach for her, but he didn't. Claire, he started, get out. Her voice broke at the edges. That was when I knew she wasn't just angry. She was hurt beyond measure. This wasn't control. This was collapse. Jonathan stepped back, defeated. I turned away before the tears returned. The door slammed behind us like a sentence. We walked in silence down the hall, the weight of what had just happened pressing heavy between us. Outside, the night had turned sharp and cold. Jonathan stopped near the curb and let out a breath he'd been holding the entire time. I thought I was prepared, he said. No one ever is, I replied. He nodded, then looked at me, really looked. She's remarkable, he said. Even in anger. She's mine. No, I said gently. She's ours. And for the first time that night, something softened in both of us. But that didn't make the pain any easier to bear. It was Claire's idea. The message came days later, short and unexpected. I want to visit Dad's grave. Tomorrow. You can come. Bring him if you want. No punctuation, no warmth, but it was something. I didn't respond with words. I simply replied, We'll be there. The cemetery was quiet when we arrived. The air was heavy, the kind of stillness that feels almost sacred. I wore a simple black coat, Jonathan beside me in silence. Neither of us knew what to expect. Claire was already there, standing before Richard's headstone, her arms wrapped around herself. She didn't turn when she heard our footsteps. She just stood there, frozen, staring at the name carved into stone. Richard Collins, beloved husband and father, 1950-2023. The phrase I had chosen, beloved husband and father, burned in my throat now. I wondered if it felt like a lie to her, or if, like me, she still wanted to believe it was the truest thing she'd ever known. We stood beside her without speaking. Minutes passed, then Claire spoke. He brought me here every year on my birthday, she said softly, to this very spot. His parents are a few rows over. We used to leave flowers and then get donuts from the bakery nearby. He always got the same thing, maple glaze. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a crumpled napkin. Inside it was a small glazed donut. I don't know why I brought it, she whispered. He can't eat it, but it felt wrong to come empty-handed. She bent down and placed it gently on the grass in front of the headstone. I miss him, she said, still facing the stone. I miss him so much it makes me want to scream. Jonathan stayed silent. He seemed to understand this moment wasn't about him, not yet. Claire finally turned toward me. I thought knowing the truth would make it easier, she said. That if I could blame someone, anyone, it would hurt less. But it doesn't. It just adds another kind of grief on top of the one I already had. I nodded, tears welling. You don't have to forgive me, I said. But I want you to know that everything I did, even the worst of it was because I was trying to hold us together. Claire's voice cracked. But we were already broken, weren't we? No, I said. Just hurting. There's a difference. Jonathan stepped forward then, hesitant. I didn't come here to replace him, he said. I never could. And I wouldn't try. He was your father in every way that counts. Claire looked at him for a long time, really looked at him. You have his height, she said, but nothing else about you reminds me of him. He didn't flinch. I wouldn't expect it to. She looked down again at the grave. Her voice softened. You know what makes someone a real father, she said, mostly to herself. It's not DNA. It's staying. Choosing to stay, even when it's hard. She reached out and touched the top of the headstone. You chose me, Dad, she whispered. That's what makes you my real father. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the leaves around our feet. I closed my eyes, letting the grief wash over me, not with violence this time, but with something gentler. Sadness, yes, but also something like peace. We stood there a while longer, 3 broken people, bound not by blood, but by loss, truth, and something slowly, painfully starting to resemble love. I didn't expect her to call him, but she did. 2 weeks after the cemetery visit, Claire sent Jonathan an email, brief, professional, an invitation to tour the offices of his company, Hayes and Stratton, a place she had once mocked from afar, calling it one of those legacy firms run by overpaid men in tailored suits. Now she wanted to see it. She didn't tell me why. She didn't need to. Something had shifted that day by Richard's grave. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something softer, a curiosity. A crack in the wall she'd built so carefully around herself. Jonathan invited me to come too, but I said no. This part was theirs. Claire wore a navy blazer. She always dressed like she was trying to prove something, and maybe she was. The receptionist greeted her with surprise, then respect. Everyone seemed to know who she was. Jonathan hadn't kept her a secret. He met her in the lobby, visibly nervous. You look like you belong here, he said. She arched a brow. I usually do. He laughed, and for the first time, she let herself smile, just a little. They walked through the building together. Glass-walled boardrooms, sunlit conference spaces, shelves of awards and framed newspaper articles. This is where you've been all these years, Claire said. He nodded. Building something, trying to matter. And what about outside this place? She asked. He hesitated. A few relationships, no marriages, no other children. Honestly, I didn't know I was missing anything until now. They paused at a hallway lined with portraits of past executives. His father, his grandfather, himself. Claire stared at the images. You really come from all this. And so do you, he said. She looked at him, guarded. I'm not ready for that, she said. I'm not looking for a second father. I wouldn't want you to, he replied. I just want to know you, however you'll allow it. They walked again, slower now. When they reached his office, he opened the door and stepped aside. She paused on the threshold, taking in the view, the books, the paintings, the precision of it all. Some of this, she said, feels familiar. Does it? She nodded. The way you arrange things, the way you speak. Your handwriting, too. I noticed it on the note you left with your business card. Jonathan's face softened. I see it in you, too. Claire looked at him, thoughtful. Maybe I've been your daughter all along. He didn't answer. He just smiled, and this time she smiled back. That evening she called me. Do you think he'd come with us to the coast this weekend? She asked. I nearly dropped the phone. You want him to come? Claire hesitated, then said, I don't know what I want, but I think I'd like to find out. And for the first time in months, I let myself hope. The cafe sat on a quiet street near the harbor, where the smell of salt clung to the morning air, and the gulls circled low, crying like they had stories to tell. We named it Second Chances. Claire resisted at first. She said it sounded too sentimental, but I saw the way she looked at the sign once it was mounted, simple, hand-painted, just above the blue door. She didn't say anything, but she didn't ask to change it either. Jonathan handled most of the business planning. He was good with logistics, negotiations, strategy. I managed the recipes, the counter, the day-to-day rhythm of a life that finally felt ours. Claire handled the branding, the books, the customers. She had a knack for order, for control, and now, finally, for warmth. People came slowly at first, locals curious about the family-run place that seemed to appear out of nowhere. Then word spread. The bread was fresh, the coffee strong, the lemon bars unforgettable, and the three of us, we were learning to move as something new. Not perfect, but real. On Sundays, we opened late. Claire would bring in fresh flowers for the windowsills. Jonathan would read the paper at the corner table while I baked in the back, the kitchen warm and familiar again. Sometimes we'd eat together after closing, quiet, without ceremony, without the weight of everything that had once been unsaid. One afternoon, a little girl wandered in, tugging at her mother's coat. Claire bent down and handed her a cookie, free of charge. She didn't say anything, just smiled. Later, I found the drawing the girl had left behind on a napkin. 3 stick figures behind a counter, one with silver hair, one with a blue apron, and one with green eyes and a tall ponytail. Claire pinned it to the corkboard near the register. She didn't say a word, and she didn't need to, because in that small, sunlit cafe by the sea, I finally understood something I had never dared believe before. Family isn't just blood. It's the choice to stay, to love, and to begin again.